This is a comprehensive summary of Stephen Bartlett's The Diary of a CEO, the 33 Laws of Business and Life. I have broken this down into the core pillars the book is built upon. Chapter 1, The 5 Buckets, the Foundation of Human Capital. Stephen Bartlett opens the book by dismantling the traditional idea of professional success. He argues that every human being possesses 5 buckets that determine their professional and personal value. The order in which you fill these buckets is the most important decision of your life. 1, knowledge, what you know. 2, skills, what you can do with what you know. 3, network, who you know. 4, resources, what you have, money, tools. 5, reputation, what the world thinks of you. The law of the 5 buckets suggests that most people try to jump straight to resources, money, without filling the first 2. However, if you lose your money but have knowledge and skills, you can get the money back. If you have money but no skills, you will eventually lose the money. The book emphasizes that in your 20s, you should be obsessed with the first 2 buckets. You should choose jobs based on how much you will learn, not how much you will earn. This creates a compounding interest effect on your career. The power of small, great things. Bartlett discusses the psychological weight of our habits. He introduces the idea that we aren't defined by our massive breakthroughs, but by the friction we remove from our daily lives. Success is a lagging indicator of your discipline. He humanizes this by sharing his own failures. The early businesses that went bust because he was chasing the resource bucket instead of mastering the skill bucket. What I have learned: prioritize learning over earning. My value isn't my bank account. It's my ability to solve problems. If I focus on being the most skilled person in the room, the money will eventually follow as a byproduct. The order matters. I need to stop networking, bucket 3, if I don't have a skill, bucket 2, to offer that network. Otherwise, I'm just a person with a lot of phone numbers and no value to provide them. Inventory check. I should regularly audit my buckets to see which one is leaking or empty. Disclaimer: the What I Have Learned sections in this summary are based on my personal interpretation and opinion of the text's core messages and are intended for educational reflection. Chapter 2, The Mastery of Self-Dealing with the Internal Narrative. This chapter moves away from external strategy and dives deep into the psychology of the leader. Bartlett argues that you cannot lead a company or a team if you cannot lead yourself. The core law here is you must never compromise your character. He explains that every time you break a promise to yourself, whether it's hitting the gym or finishing a report, you lose a vote of self-confidence. Your brain starts to view you as an unreliable narrator. The concept of quitting, contrary to popular hustle culture advice, Bartlett argues that winners quit fast. He provides a framework for when to walk away. If it's hard but has a high reward, keep going. If it's hard and you no longer believe in the why, quit immediately. Strategic quitting is not a failure. It is an optimization of your time. He reflects on his time building Social Chain, noting that the moments he felt most burnt out were when his internal narrative didn't align with his daily actions. What I have learned: self-integrity is currency. My confidence is simply the reputation I have with myself. If I tell myself I'll do something and I don't, I am bankrupting my own self-esteem. Quitting is a tool. I used to think quitting was for the weak. Now I see it as a way to free up bandwidth for things that actually matter. The why audit: every month I need to ask if the struggle I'm enduring is actually leading to a goal I still care about. Chapter 3, The Philosophy of Communication. How to sell anything to anyone. In this section, Bartlett focuses on the psychology of the story. He posits that humans are not rational creatures. We are emotional creatures who use logic to justify our feelings. To be a great CEO or a great human, you must master the art of frame control. This means whoever defines the context of a conversation wins the negotiation. He uses examples from his podcast interviews, explaining how he creates a safe space for billionaires and celebrities to cry or share their deepest secrets by first being vulnerable himself, the law of the useless detail. He discusses how unnecessary, high-quality details in a product or a story create a perception of excellence. If you care about the small things that don't matter, people will trust you with the big things that do. What I have learned: Facts tell, stories sell. I need to stop dumping data on people and start painting a picture of the future. Vulnerability is power. To get people to trust me, I have to be willing to show my own cracks first. It breaks down walls faster than any power pose ever could. Context is king. Before I start a meeting, I need to set the frame so everyone knows why we are really there. Moving forward into the next core section of the book, we transition from the self and internal communication to the laws of marketing and team dynamics. Stephen Bartlett argues that once you have mastered your buckets and your mindset, you must master the art of influence. Chapter 4, The Laws of Marketing, the Fight for Attention. In this chapter, Bartlett challenges the old-school marketing textbooks. He asserts that attention is the world's most valuable commodity. In a digital age, if you cannot grab someone's eyes or ears within the first 3 seconds, your message, no matter how good it is, effectively doesn't exist. He introduces the law of the edgy truth. Most brands and people are too afraid to be polarizing, so they end up being beige. To be successful, you must be willing to say the things that others are thinking but are too afraid to say. This creates social currency. People share your content because it makes them look smart, in the know, or brave for agreeing with you. Friction and psychology. A significant part of this chapter focuses on reducing friction. Bartlett explains that humans are biologically wired to take the path of least resistance. If your website takes 2 seconds too long to load, or if your sign-up form has one too many boxes, you lose. He calls this the law of the 1% margin. Success in marketing isn't about one giant viral video. It's about removing 100 tiny pieces of friction from the customer's journey, what I have learned. The 3-second rule. If I'm sending an email, making a post, or starting a presentation, the hook is everything. If I don't win the first few seconds, I've lost the entire hour. Stop being beige. I need to take a stand. Being liked by everyone is the same as being invisible to everyone. I should aim to be the only, rather than the best. Audit for friction. I need to look at my own life and work. Where am I making things harder than they need to be for others to say yes to me? Chapter 5. The Laws of Leadership and Team Hiring, Firing, and Culture. This is perhaps the most humanized part of the book. Bartlett admits his early mistakes in leadership, where he thought being a boss meant having all the answers. He now defines leadership as the management of energy. A CEO's job is to create an environment where high performers want to stay. He introduces the concept of the cultural barometer. Culture isn't what you write on the office walls. It's the behavior you reward and the behavior you tolerate. If you tolerate a brilliant jerk, someone who is good at their job but toxic to the team, you are telling the rest of the team that toxicity is acceptable. The law of the A player. Bartlett argues that one A player, a top-tier talent, is worth more than 10 B players. He advocates for hiring slow and firing fast. This sounds cold, but he frames it as an act of kindness. Keeping someone in a role they aren't suited for is stealing their time and preventing them from finding a job where they could actually excel. What I have learned. Culture is what you do, not what you say. My actions set the standard. If I want a punctual team, I can never be late. If I want an honest team, I must be radically transparent. The cost of average. Filling a gap with a mediocre person creates more work in the long run. It's better to be short-staffed and wait for the right person than to rush and hire a B player. Radical candor. Giving tough feedback isn't being mean, it's being helpful. Keeping quiet about someone's mistakes is actually selfish because it protects my feelings at the expense of their growth. Chapter 6. The Laws of Strategy and Execution. Moving from idea to reality. Bartlett concludes this section by discussing the velocity of failure. In business, the person who fails the fastest wins. Why? Because every failure is a data point. If it takes your competitor 6 months to realize an idea is bad, but it only takes you 2 weeks, you are moving at a 12x speed advantage. He talks about the OODA loop. Observe, orient, decide, act on. The goal of any organization should be to shorten the time between an observation and an action. He warns against analysis paralysis, the tendency to keep researching because you're afraid to make a mistake. The law of the smallest viable test. Instead of launching a massive project, Bartlett suggests finding the smallest possible way to test your hypothesis. Want to start a podcast? Don't buy a $2,000 mic. Record a 5-minute voice note on your phone and see if anyone listens. What I have learned: speed is a competitive advantage. Perfect is the enemy of done. I should aim for good enough to test rather than perfectly polished. Fail cheap and fast. I need to stop viewing failure as a bruise to my ego and start viewing it as an experiment. The cheaper the lab fee, the failure, the more experiments I can run. Decisiveness is a skill. Making a wrong decision is often better than making no decision at all, because a wrong decision still gives you information. We are now roughly halfway through the core laws. In this next segment, we move into the high-stakes territory of the book. These chapters focus on how to maintain your edge when things get difficult and how to innovate in a world that is constantly trying to make you obsolete. Chapter 7, The Laws of Innovation. The art of first principles thinking. Stephen Bartlett argues that most people in businesses fail because they act based on dogma. They do things a certain way simply because that's how it's always been done. He introduces the concept of first principles thinking, a mental model used heavily by people like Elon Musk. The law here is break it down to the physics. If you want to innovate, you must strip a problem down to its fundamental truths and build back up from there. For example, instead of asking, how can we make a better taxi service, which leads to a slightly better taxi, you ask, how can we get a human from point A to point B as efficiently as possible, which leads to Uber. The crazy phase. Bartlett humanizes the innovation process by discussing the ridicule phase. Every great idea looks stupid right up until it looks obvious. He notes that if everyone agrees with your new idea, it's probably not an innovation, it's just an incremental improvement. To truly innovate, you must be willing to be misunderstood for long periods of time. What I have learned: question everything. I need to stop saying we do this because it's the industry standard. Industry standards are often just collective ruts. The wine pond chain, when faced with a process, I should ask why 5 times. Usually by the third why, the original reason for the process has disappeared, but the habit remained. Embrace the ridicule. If people think my new approach is a bit weird, I'm likely on the right track toward a true breakthrough. Chapter 8, The Laws of Resilience. Protecting your mental health in the trenches. This chapter is one of the most personal in the book. Bartlett addresses the founder's trap, the idea that you are your work. He warns that if your self-worth is tied to your company's valuation or your latest project's success, you are on a one-way trip to burnout. The law he proposes is the law of the social anchor. He explains that high performers often isolate themselves to work harder, but this actually makes them more fragile. You need anchors, friends and family who don't care about your CEO title or your success, to keep you grounded. Stress versus challenge. He differentiates between bad stress, feeling out of control, and good stress, feeling challenged but capable. Resilience isn't about avoiding stress. It's about increasing your internal locus of control. This is the belief that you have the power to influence the outcome of your life. When your locus of control is external, blaming the economy, the algorithm, or luck, your resilience vanishes. What I have learned: decouple my identity. I am a human being who does work. I am not my work. This keeps me sane when things go wrong. Control the controllables. When I feel overwhelmed, I need to list what I can control and ignore everything else. My stress levels are usually tied to how much I'm worrying about things outside my influence. The power of the pivot. Resilience isn't just toughing it out. Sometimes it's having the mental flexibility to change direction when the path is blocked. Chapter 9, The Laws of Influence and Perception, the Halo Effect and Beyond. In this chapter, Bartlett explores how the world perceives us. He discusses the halo effect, a cognitive bias where our overall impression of a person, e.g. they're well-dressed, influences how we feel about their specific traits, e.g. they must be a brilliant strategist. The law here is design your first impression. You cannot avoid being judged, so you might as well curate the judgment. He talks about the importance of signals. Whether it's the quality of your microphone on a Zoom call or the way you walk into a room, these signals tell a story before you even speak. The power of social proof. He explains that people are herd animals. We look to others to decide how to act. If you can show that other respected people trust you, the rest of the world will follow suit without needing much more evidence. This is why testimonials and partnerships are more than just marketing. They are psychological shortcuts for trust, what I have learned. Signals matter. I need to be intentional about the small details I project. If I want to be taken seriously, I have to signal professionalism in everything from my email signature to my punctuality. Boost to borrow credibility. Until I have my own massive reputation, I should align myself with established A players and brands to benefit from their halo. The mirror effect. People will reflect the energy I bring. If I enter a room with confidence and warmth, that is usually what I will receive in return. We are moving into the final stretch. We are now entering the heart of the book, the operational philosophy that separates those who dream from those who execute. Chapter 10, The Laws of High Performance Philosophy, the Discipline Equation. In this section, Stephen Bartlett breaks down the myth of motivation. He argues that motivation is a feeling that comes and goes, making it an unreliable foundation for a career. Instead, he introduces the discipline equation. Discipline is equal to the importance of why. If you want to stay disciplined, you shouldn't try to willpower your way through. Instead, you should increase the importance, remind yourself why you're doing it, increase the reward, make the process enjoyable, and ruthlessly decrease the friction, make it easy to start. The law of the 1% margin. Bartlett pays homage to the aggregation of marginal gains. He explains that you don't need to be 100% better than your competitor in one area. You just need to be 1% better in 100 different areas. This is humanized through his story of Social Chain, where they obsessed over the smallest details of social media algorithms that others ignored. What I have learned. Fix the environment, not the willpower. If I'm struggling to stay disciplined, I shouldn't blame my character. I should look at my environment. Is there too much friction? Is my why too blurry? The power of tiny gains. I need to stop looking for silver bullets. Success is found in the boring, tiny improvements I make to my morning routine, my email habits, and my focus time. Incentivize the process. I need to find a way to make the doing feel like a reward, not just the result. Chapter 11. The Laws of Failure and Pivot. Outfailing the competition. This chapter introduces the counterintuitive idea that the person who fails the most wins. Bartlett explains that in the modern world, information is the only real advantage. The only way to get information is to test things in the real world. He shares a law called the law of the OODA loop. Observe, orient, decide, act. The faster you can cycle through this loop, the faster you learn. If your competitor takes a year to realize a product is bad, but you realize it in a week because you failed fast, you are effectively living 52 years for every 1 year of theirs. Negative manifestation. Bartlett speaks about pre-mortems. Before starting a project, he gathers his team and asks, "It's 1 year from now and this project has failed miserably. Why did it happen?" By visualizing the failure before it happens, you can build a map to avoid the pitfalls. What I have learned. Speed is safety. Moving slowly feels safe, but it's actually the most dangerous thing I can do because it wastes my most limited resource, time. The pre-mortem tool. Before I launch my next big idea, I will sit down and brainstorm exactly how it could fail. This isn't being a hater, it's being a strategist. Failure is a data point. I need to stop taking no or a failed project personally. It's just the universe giving me a piece of data to help me adjust my aim. Chapter 12, the laws of team and cult culture. Hiring for the who, not the how. In the final thematic pillar, Bartlett focuses on the people around you. He argues that most companies hire for skills, the how, but fire for character, the who. He suggests flipping this. Hire people with the right obsessive character and high cognitive ability, and they will teach themselves the how. He introduces the concept of the cult-like culture. While the word cult has negative connotations, Bartlett uses it to describe a team with a shared, unbreakable set of values. A great culture is a self-healing system. If someone enters the team who doesn't fit the values, the team naturally ejects them without the CEO needing to interfere. The law of inconsistent leadership. This is a controversial law. Bartlett argues that treating everyone fairly, the same, is actually unfair. Different people need different styles of leadership. Some need a coach, some need a commander, and some just need to be left alone. A great leader is a chameleon who adapts to the needs of the individual. What I have learned: hire for obsession. I'd rather have a passionate amateur than a cynical expert. Expertise can be bought. Obsession is a gift. Be a chameleon. I need to stop leading people the way I want to be led and start leading them the way they need to be led. Culture is a filter. I need to be very clear about my values. The right people should feel at home, and the wrong people should feel uncomfortable. Final summary, the final takeaway. Stephen Bartlett's philosophy boils down to personal accountability, whether it is filling your 5 buckets, mastering your internal narrative, or building a team of A players. The common thread is that you are the architect of your own friction. The book isn't just about business. It's a manual for human psychology. If you understand how your brain works, how other people's brains work, and how the math of compounding works, success becomes an inevitability rather than a stroke of luck. If you'd like the audiobook, please subscribe to my channel for more summaries. Hit the bell icon to get notifications whenever new audiobook summary is uploaded. Thank you for watching and listening.